everyone. Welcome. It is 11 o'clock here. What day is it? Monday. Today is Monday that we're doing our cooking class because Wednesday is the day before Thanksgiving and I figured probably no one was going to watch. So we're doing it a couple days early to give you time to watch the video in between your busy schedule. Maybe make some of these recipes for Thanksgiving if you really wanted to. I'm going to adjust the camera a little bit. It's a little bit crooked and it's going to bother me. So I'm going to adjust it really quickly. Whoopsie. That was the cat running away. So hang with me here. Hopefully that's better. All right, I'm gonna take a quick sip of water too. Got my water nearby. Alrighty, now we're ready to go. My name is Melissa. I'm HealthAware's registered dietitian and personal trainer. Welcome to our online plant-based cooking class. I'm very excited that you're here. If you're watching live or watching the recorded version later on, welcome. Please let me know if you have any questions or comments during this video, live or recorded. Just type them in the comment section and I should be able to answer any questions that you may have or just see any feedback that you have as well. So today we have 3 recipes, hopefully, that we're gonna work through. I am going to right now put all 3 recipes onto this video below in the comments. So bear with me just one moment while I do that. One moment. Okay. So there's recipe number 1. Good. And then recipe number 2. And then finally, our 3rd recipe. Sorry about this. There is no better way to do this. All right, so we've got all 3 into the comment section, so we can get that out of our way. Great. Now, if you do want printable PDF versions of the recipes, I'm happy to send those to you in email. Just send me an email or comment in the comment section if you would like to have those in a printable format. All right, let's get started. We've got a lot to cover today. So this is number 2 of our holiday series, kind of doing holiday themed sort of recipes. So for today we are doing vegan cauliflower mashed potatoes, also a vegan mushroom gravy to go along with that. These are 2 recipes that I did make for last year's Thanksgiving class. That was our first plant-based cooking class actually. And then we're also making a vegan pumpkin maple pecan granola. Yes. So let's get started. We're actually going to start, I have to organize my thoughts. We're going to start with the gravy because it does take a little bit more time, sort of. So we're gonna start with that. I've got, you can kind of see it, I've got one of my saucepans over here. So I'm going to turn the heat on to that, sort of a medium, get it in the middle of the burner, sort of a medium-low heat, okay? And then first on our recipe is that we are doing the, I think I forgot to add in the recipe to add oil. Oh, heat oil, there we go. I can read. So we've got oil, we're starting with oil. This is avocado oil. You probably could use extra virgin olive oil, but I am using avocado oil. It's good for high heat, as we've talked about a lot recently. So not a lot for that one. All you need is 1.5 teaspoons. So not a super large amount for that. So into the pot using my avocado oil, just probably honestly 1 teaspoon is fine, but 1.5, that was a little bit more than 1/2, I think. All right, get rid of that. So 1.5 teaspoons into there of your oil of choice. Then the next thing we're going to do is add in our onion and garlic powder. If you have fresh garlic, that's fine. I don't like garlic, as you may know by now. So I'm actually going to pretend that I'm adding it into this. I don't like onion either, but it's kind of part of this, so we're doing that. You're going to do 1 medium yellow onion. I'm cheating and I'm using already diced onion. So it's about a cup. Not have to be super specific on it, but it's about a cup if you're using already diced up onions. That is really strong. That is very strong smelling. Okay. Whew. I'm not an onion type of gal. All right. So we've got that in the pot with the garlic. Just pretend that we have it in the pot with the garlic. So we're just cooking it for a few minutes just to get the onion to where it's more translucent, a little bit of color on it perhaps. So we're letting that go. We'll keep popping in on it. Should just take a couple minutes. So we're gonna talk through the rest of our ingredients. We've got mushrooms. That's obviously the main part of our recipe. So I've already sliced these, so you don't have to watch me slice them. I try to choose, this is actually just a package of mushrooms, so those regular square packages, it's usually 8 ounces in the package. So whatever that makes is fine. This may or may not be a full 3 cups, but 8 ounces in the package. So I tend to try to choose the smaller sized mushrooms because in a recipe like a gravy, the smaller ones just kind of are a little bit nicer, I feel. So some of them are pretty small, okay, and I just slice them up. Not super thin, but certainly not thick. Oops, got an onion on there. These are cremini mushrooms. You could use white mushrooms if you really wanted to. If you couldn't find cremini mushrooms, it's fine. It's not the end of the world. The cremini are the darker brown ones. They look like little tiny portobello mushrooms. So working on our onion in here, getting it a little bit closer, almost there. So then the rest of the ingredients that we have, some of them are decently basic. We've got, of course, salt, pepper if you like. I don't prefer pepper in my food. It's a little bit strong. Garlic powder if you want it. Also dried rosemary is our other dry ingredient for the flavoring. We have vegetable broth. I tend to choose a low sodium or sodium free. This is low sodium from Trader Joe's. I tend to choose a low sodium version of broth because we are adding salt in there as well. And also, once we get to more of the interesting ingredients, coconut aminos also has a bit of sodium in it too, or soy sauce if you're using that. Coconut aminos, this is also from Trader Joe's. You can find it at other stores. Of course, the packaging will look a little different, but like Sprouts sells it, Whole Foods sells it. So this is another component that we have. So this has salt. Our salt, of course, has salt. So the broth really doesn't need to have salt in it. I'm gonna give our onion one little stir. We are getting close, very close. I might have the heat a little too high. All right. Then the other ingredient I wanted to talk about actually is the flour. So in the recipe, the flour is all-purpose flour, so just regular white flour. Today I'm actually using white whole wheat flour. Right there. You can use, it's not a lot of flour, so it's not like it's the end of the world. You could use regular all-purpose flour if you want, or if you want to go a little bit more towards the healthy side, a whole wheat flour, I haven't tried that one, or a white whole wheat flour, which is whole wheat. It is just lighter colored. It uses a different type of wheat than regular whole wheat. So it's just a little bit lighter in texture, a little bit closer to an all-purpose flour. So we've got our onion, and it has, I don't think you can see this on a camera very well, but it has turned to more of a translucent sort of color. So from here, now we can add some more things. So we're going to next add in salt right now, and that is 1/4 of a teaspoon. 1/4 of a teaspoon in with the salt. I give it a little bit of a stir just to get it mixed around. Okay. And then next we're adding in the main part of our recipe, which is, you could also put pepper in there if you want to. We're now adding in the mushrooms. So this is the longer part of the recipe, just letting the mushrooms cook down. So all of those guys going right into the pot. Gonna give them a quick stir so the mushrooms aren't just sitting, or the onions aren't just sitting on the bottom. There we go. Little stir. Sorry, that's probably really loud in the camera. All right, mushrooms are in. Add your lid, and we're going to let those cook for anywhere 8 to 10 minutes. Might be less, it might be more. We're letting the mushrooms cook down. I'm going to adjust my heat down just the tiniest bit. I don't want anything to burn. So you can stir those around. The mushrooms will release some moisture as they continue to cook. So that will help things from getting stuck and burned on the bottom. But again, stirring them around every so often. From here, we are going to let those cook and kind of check back in on this one. But we're actually now going to jump over to the mashed potatoes, the mashed cauliflower potatoes recipe, okay? So I have already taken the liberty of cooking the cauliflower and the potatoes because that would have taken like 25 minutes and I didn't want to make you sit here and wait for that. So just know the recipe calls for 2 pounds, approximately 900 grams if you're weighing it like that, of the yellow potatoes, the gold potatoes. You can peel them, or you can leave them with the peel on. I typically choose to leave with the peel on. That's where more of the nutrition is. I also like textured mashed potatoes. If you don't like textured mashed potatoes, then you'll need to peel them ahead of time. The gold ones don't really have a super tough peel on them, so those should be okay. And then 1 small head of cauliflower, approximately 675 grams if you're measuring with a scale. It doesn't have to be super specific, you know, a typical head of cauliflower, or if you want to buy your cauliflower already pre-chopped up for you, at Trader Joe's, 2 of those bags is approximately the 675. I think technically it's 680 grams. Each one of those bags in the grocery produce section is 340 grams. So 2 bags of those would also be the right amount. So chopped up into smaller type of pieces. I've already done that. And then once you have them cooked, so potatoes go in first with water, cook them for about 10 minutes. You don't want them to be completely cooked. And then you add the cauliflower and cook it till everything is fully soft. Then drain it all out, and now that's where we are. I'm gonna give our mushrooms a quick stir though. Excellent. Those are still working. So now that I've got it to, everything is cooked in here. Hopefully it's still warm enough to melt butter. I'm pretty sure it is. Drained them all out. We've got our potatoes. Let me just get rid of that. Potatoes and cauliflower. So now we mash them. I'm going to transfer them into a large bowl, partly so you can see and partly so I don't scratch my pan. Oops, that has a little bit of water still in it. That's okay. All right, so everything into the pot or into the bowl, and you can see the sizes, and I wasn't super specific with the sizes. I said about 1-inch chunks in the recipe, and that's fine. You just want to try to get them all to where they're a similar size, and then just mash away so where you get your Thanksgiving workout in. I am using actually a pastry cutter. You can use, if you have an actual potato masher, that's fine. Or some people also like to whip their potatoes. I am not in that camp of whipped mashed potatoes. I like mine actually mashed because I don't like them totally smooth. So that is up to you. But we're going to mash them for a little bit. Okay? Mash, you don't want any, especially you don't want any of the cauliflower chunks really to be large. The potatoes aren't as important if there's smaller chunks of those, but I find that it's fun to, not fun, but it's just nicer to kind of hide the cauliflower in here. So get all those chunks mashed down. Okay, and there was a little bit of water still in my pot when I poured them in here, so they're a little bit softer, but that's actually not the end of the world because these tend to firm up as they cool. All right, so this is where we're at with our mashed potatoes, okay? Next, we're going to add in then just our last two, got potato on my arm. Our last two ingredients, and that is just salt and then our non-dairy, our vegan butter. So the vegan butter that I prefer is this, Miyoko's, or however you want to pronounce it, Miyoko's. This is one of the best vegan butters that I've tasted. It tastes very much like butter. My husband loves it. Everybody in the family loves it. You can find this at Trader Joe's. You can find it at Sprouts, at Whole Foods, probably at Lassen's. I don't think it's at Vaughn's, but all those other stores you can find it. Trader Joe's, which is great. That's very convenient for a lot of people. This is my favorite. So we are adding, before we do that, let me give my mushrooms a quick stir. Oh, good. They're almost ready. They will be ready for us when we're ready for them. So we're adding in 2 tablespoons of this butter, or butter substitute. It's kind of a mess. So I've got my 2 tablespoons. It's okay if you're not super specific. I'm just sort of scraping it out of, there we go. Scraping it out of the container. So the main ingredient in this one actually is coconut oil, I believe, which is too bad because that has a lot of saturated fat in it. But that's, I think, what gives it a lot of its structure. There we go. So ingredients in this are coconut oil, cashew milk, actually. Cashew milk is the other one. And water and cashews, sunflower oil, sea salt, and sunflower lecithin, which is an emulsifier. So a very minimal ingredient. You can also use something like Earth Balance. That's also a decently popular one of the vegan plant-based type of butters. That one has more, it's primarily made from oils, like, that's not coconut oil. It's primarily made from like soybean oil, palm, I think it might have palm oil, olive oil, canola oil, kind of that mixture of oils, kind of like a margarine might be. So that was our butter. And then we add our salt into it. So our salt, we want 1 full teaspoon, which I didn't get a teaspoon. Oh yes, I did, I lied. That's not a teaspoon, I can't read. We need a teaspoon. There we go. 1 teaspoon of salt. If you like your mashed potatoes with garlic or with pepper or whatever else, then you would add that in as well. And we're gonna give that a quick mash. Get the butter and the salt incorporated completely throughout. The butter should melt right on in. Gets them a little bit creamier. Almost there. Almost there. I'm melting a little tiny bit of the butter. Perfect. So there is our finished product. We will scoop out a serving when our gravy is done. So for now, we're gonna set these off to the side. Hopefully not do anything. There we go. Off to the side. And then we're going to now check back in with our gravy. So we've got the mushrooms going with all the other things, and from here, everything is now fully cooked down. I don't know if you can see it. I'll try to bring it to you. So we've got mushroom, ooh, that's steamy. Mushrooms that are cooked down with the onions. They are decently moist. The mushrooms, like I said, have released a lot of their moisture. So they're cooked down and shrunk in size. Not a dry pan, it has moisture. Next thing we're going to do is then add in oh, I forgot to add the rosemary. Woo! No one told me. Let's add the rosemary. Does the butter yeah, the butter is what has the coconut oil. Maybe I already answered that question. Yeah, the butter is primarily made with coconut oil, but also cashew milk. So I forgot to add our rosemary. So I'm going to use a dirty spoon, and let me add that in there. So we're doing about a 1/4 teaspoon. That was approximate. About a 1/4 teaspoon into there of the dried rosemary. We'll just give it a little stir. It's not the end of the world that we added it now, I promise. There we go. Incorporate that in. Now we can move on. All right, so the next thing we're doing is to add in our flour, but also have your broth and the coconut aminos ready to go. So the flour, of course, is our thickening agent. So we're going to add in 2 tablespoons plus 1.5 teaspoons, which is technically 2.5 tablespoons, okay? Just to clarify. 1.5 teaspoons is the same as a 1/2 tablespoon. So we are using that white whole wheat flour. There's 1 tablespoon. 2 tablespoons. And then I've got a 1/2 tablespoon measuring right there. Okay. So we stir that in with the mushrooms so that all of the mushrooms are fully coated with the flour. So it will thicken up quite pretty immediately. Get everything coated. From here, now we are adding in our broth and the coconut aminos. But does it affect the flavor? Oh, coconut flavor. I understand what you're asking, Claudia. Sorry about that. Hold on, I'll answer that question in just a moment. Let's add our broth in really quick. So we're doing 1 1/4 cup. So this, again, it's just vegetable broth. Make sure that you're not buying like chicken broth or beef broth. We do want vegetable broth for this recipe. That was 1 cup. And then we're going to do our 1/4 cup. There you go. And we will finish by putting in the 2 tablespoons of the coconut aminos. In case you're wondering, coconut aminos is organic coconut sap, water, and sea salt. So that's what it is. It's sort of a soy-free, gluten-free version of soy sauce, kind of. So we're doing 2 tablespoons of that in there. There you go. 2 tablespoons. And this, we will give it a quick stir, and we do want it to come back to a boil, or a simmer, I guess. A boil, a simmer. Okay. I'm just checking my recipe. Let me scoop off. Some of my flour got stuck onto my spoon. All right. So while this comes back to a boil, let's talk more about the butter. So this, I personally don't think it tastes like coconut at all. My husband really does not like foods that taste like coconut if they're not supposed to taste like coconut. So like you, Claudia, he does not want things to taste like coconut. So he has never really complained about this tasting like coconut. There are different types of coconut oil. So ones that are refined, I believe, that doesn't really have a coconut flavor to it. So I imagine that's probably what they do with this, so that it does not taste like coconut. It's not like a tropical spread. So I would recommend trying it. If you don't like it, Claudia, you can just give it to me. Just kidding. Let me turn our heat up just a little bit. But yeah, the thing to remember about coconut oil or things with coconut oil in them is that it is higher in saturated fat. That's the only thing to be mindful about. There was something else I was gonna say, I can't remember. Oh, it has a similar nutrition profile as butter, like regular butter. 1 tablespoon is 90 calories of this one and 10 grams of fat. Primarily, it is saturated fat. Keep that in mind. What was I gonna say? And at Trader Joe's, I wanna say it's somewhere in the $4 to $5 range for one of these boxes. You can also use this butter to replace a lot of things in plant-based recipes. So like pie crusts, it works to use this. I think other types of like cookies, I've made cake frosting out of it. So this brand is particularly very versatile. I don't really like the taste anymore of the Earth Balance vegan butter. This is my preference. So our mushroom gravy has come back to a boil. So I'm just gonna be giving it a little bit of a stir. It's kind of simmering right now. We want to keep stirring it for a few minutes, and we want it to start thickening. So the flour that we added will help it thicken. It may take a couple minutes. So if you have any more questions, please let me know in the comment section. I don't think anyone else added any more questions. Like I said, I made these 2 recipes for the Thanksgiving cooking class. The first cooking class we taught last November, and we were actually, of course, able to have that live in person, which was great. So everyone could actually taste the food, and people really, really liked the gravy. I've had several people tell me that they make it all the time, actually still, and use it as part of as their gravy rather than other gravy, which is great to hear. I also wanted to mention about the mashed potatoes, the cauliflower mashed potatoes. So they are, as you know, of course, half cauliflower, which helps reduce the carbohydrate content of that recipe a little bit versus regular mashed potatoes. Mashed potatoes, of course, are primarily just potatoes, which is decently high carb. Cauliflower is much lower in carbohydrates than potatoes. So by having kind of a half and half mix, you reduce the carbohydrate content, which is great for people who are more concerned about blood sugar, diabetes or pre-diabetes, especially on days like Thanksgiving, where you have many other foods which also have carbohydrates in them. So, and I will say, it doesn't just taste like cauliflower, it tastes like mashed potatoes. Our gravy is almost ready. I just wanted it to thicken up a little bit more. And you may have better luck thickening with the all-purpose flour than with a true whole wheat flour, I'm just gonna say. But it really depends on how thick you like gravy. Claudia had a question. Oh yeah, so I just sliced my mushrooms. I think it looks pretty to have sliced mushrooms in a gravy, but if you like them chopped up into smaller pieces, that is totally fine. It's really up to you on that one. Smaller pieces would be completely fine. Those mushrooms I showed you at the beginning, they are not the same size as they were then. When they're raw, they are much larger, and then when you cook them down, they shrink in size. So there aren't giant pieces of mushroom in this gravy, but if you really don't like chewing mushrooms, then yes. Then yes, you can definitely chop them or dice them up much finer. Okay, so our gravy is good to go. It is pretty hot. I wanted to pour it into a different bowl. I don't want to break my bowl. I think it's okay to pour it in. I'm gonna let it cool just a little bit. I want you to be able to see the consistency, see the textures of it. And then we're also going to plate up this one so you can see the fully compiled recipe. All right, I'm gonna put a little bit in here to kind of warm up the bowl. Warm up the bowl a little bit. I had almost a nightmare last night about pouring hot stuff into one of these glass bowls and having it break live on the video. Oh, it would have been terrible. All right, so I really want to avoid that. Woo, a little splattery. All right, so this is our gravy. Ooh, that smells really good. It smells like Thanksgiving now in the house. All right, so I don't know if you could see that, but as I was pouring, this, ooh, it's very, very steamy. This is sort of the consistency, a little bit on the looser side, which is kind of nice, but as it cools, it will thicken even more. And like I said, if you do all-purpose flour, just regular white flour, it very well might be thicker, but again, it thickens as it cools down just a little bit. So for our fully compiled dish, we'll get a scoop of mashed potatoes, and you can see that there are the skins within the mashed potatoes. Okay, that's how I like it. And then we'll add some of our gravy into that without spilling everywhere. Oops, I did spill a little bit. I'll come a little bit closer and you can see. So this is our finished mashed potatoes, mashed cauliflower potatoes, or cauliflower mashed potatoes, I guess you call them. Cauliflower mashed potatoes with our mushroom gravy. Ta-da! And obviously this recipe makes, oops, there's mashed potatoes there. These recipes make a decent amount. They make a decent amount. So this is the amount of mashed potatoes that it makes. So definitely a good 8 servings probably. I think I had 6 servings on the recipe, which are very large servings. You can see this divided by 6. It's quite large servings. And then the gravy makes approximately 2 cups, give or take, which probably is enough to satisfy that amount of mashed potatoes. We're gonna set these guys off to the side. Our lovely mashed potatoes there. And now we're gonna transition over to our granola recipe. Yummy, Claudia says yummy, good. I will be definitely having mashed potatoes and gravy for lunch today. So we're transitioning now into the next recipe, the granola. Trying to get all my stuff out of the way. I wanted to make a recipe that was maybe more towards the breakfast side of things, because I do feel that on Thanksgiving, it's okay to eat your breakfast. We had talked about this, I think maybe it was last week's class, or the week, I think it was maybe 2 weeks ago, for the Carb Smart class. A lot of people will tend to skip meals, not eat all day, and then go crazy at the Thanksgiving meal, and that's not necessarily the best way to do things. It's okay to have small meals before Thanksgiving so that you don't go completely crazy and blow out your blood sugar and all of that at your Thanksgiving meal. So this recipe is something that could be used as maybe a light breakfast before your Thanksgiving meal. Let me grab all of my ingredients. That's all the way outside. Grab my ingredients for the granola. Okay. I think that's everything. Yeah. All right. For our granola, I need a recipe. Not a super complicated recipe, which is nice. And also, it's a decently low sugar recipe. So in the world of granola, that's actually something somewhat rare to find. A lot of packaged granolas are very high in sugar. So this one is much lower in sugar, but it has enough sweetness that it actually does taste good. And it actually bakes up so it's crispy. Let's get into it. I already actually have my oven preheated to 325 degrees, and I have my 2 baking sheets. I've got this baking sheet and the other one behind me with a piece of parchment on them. You could probably do it just on your baking sheet, but I hate cleaning baking sheets. So I use parchment paper. We are starting with 3.5 cups of rolled oats. So they might be called old-fashioned oats or rolled oats, depends on what brand you're buying. Trader Joe's here calls them rolled oats. I think Quaker calls them old-fashioned oats. It's the ones that are not the quick 1-minute cooking oats. The ones that are whole oats, okay? So that was 3 cups. And then here is our half. I hope I have enough room to mix in this bowl. And then we're doing 3/4 cups of raw pecans. Make sure that they are raw, not toasted, not salted, none of that, completely raw. And these are pecan pieces, so probably whole pecans wouldn't go as well. So you want to make sure that they are in pieces or chop them up yourself. There we go. So 3/4 cups. If you don't like pecans, you could absolutely use a different type of nut, like walnuts, or even like pumpkin seeds or pepitas, they're sometimes called. Those would be fine. Probably almonds, sliced almonds would be fine too. Pecan is sometimes a little bit more of a holiday sort of nut, so that's what we're going with today. So we've got 3/4 cups into our bowl with the oats. Next, we're going to add just 2 tablespoons of sugar. I'm using just regular organic cane sugar. Just 2 tablespoons of this. So there's 1 and 2. So having a little bit of sugar does help it get crunchy, crisp up in the oven. So you want just enough sugar. And we will be adding more of a sweetener later, so that's not the only sugar that's in here, okay? 2 tablespoons of the sugar. And then I'm gonna skip to the salt actually right now because I'm going to talk about the pumpkin spice in a little more detail. So we're doing 1/4 teaspoon of salt, just regular old table salt. You could use the pink Himalayan sea salt if you want, that's my favorite, whatever you like. Now let's talk about the pumpkin pie spice. You can buy containers of pumpkin pie spice. They do sell that, that's fine. Trader Joe's or any grocery store pretty much will have some version of a pumpkin pie spice. I myself don't prefer the packaged pumpkin pie spices. I find them a little bit heavy on certain flavors, and so they almost have like a spiciness to them, and I don't really like that. So I am making my own pumpkin pie spice here for you today. I'm using cinnamon, ground ginger, a little bit of ground nutmeg, and then some ground cloves. I have a tiny little container here, a little dish. So we're aiming for 3/4 teaspoon, I think 3/4 of a teaspoon of the pumpkin pie spice. So I'm just gonna kind of eyeball it. I'm putting primarily cinnamon into this mixture. And then we're doing just a little bit of the ginger. If you want to lean more heavy on one of these, ginger and cinnamon would be the 2 to add more of versus the nutmeg and cloves. Those 2 tend to be quite strong. So this is our nutmeg, just a tiny little sprinkle of that one, not a ton, and then even less probably of the cloves. Cloves in particular are decently strong. And then looks like I may need a little bit more cinnamon. So if you need to add more of one of them, cinnamon would be the one to do. So I'm just gonna mix it up a little bit. I don't know if you can see that. Just a little mixture in my bowl there. And I'm gonna measure out 3/4 teaspoon of this mixture we just made. So it looks like I made about one teaspoon in there. So that was all. If you want to use a pumpkin pie spice, that is fine. It is totally your choice. So from here, we're just gonna give this a little bit of a stir to try to kind of incorporate everything throughout the spices, get the nuts mixed around, okay? Set that guy off to the side, and we're going to do our liquid stuff in this. So just a couple items. We're doing maple syrup. So pure maple syrup, I know I've said this before, pure maple syrup, not the Mrs. Butterworth's or whatever it is that's got other stuff in it that's not maple syrup, okay? Pure maple syrup, that's the one we want. Let me get all that out of there. And then the other thing that we add into this is pumpkin puree, could think. I've already opened a can of it, so this is the leftovers that I have. So just regular old pumpkin puree, canned pumpkin. You don't want to get any of the like pumpkin pie filling mix or whatever they call it these days in the can. Just regular pureed pumpkin. I think this is Trader Joe's brand. It doesn't really matter what brand you use. So we're doing 1/3 cup of this, which is actually just about what I have left in this container. Lucky for me. Okay, trying to find where I put that. 1/3 cup of that goes right on in with the maple syrup. I need something better than a fork. There we go. 1/3 cup of that into the mixture. And then we are doing a little bit of oil because granola is almost impossible to make the right texture without a little bit of oil. So I'm using, again, this avocado oil. I got this from Trader Joe's. I think it's about $8 maybe for this bottle. So 1/4 cup of oil is what we're using. You could use extra virgin olive oil if you want for this, because we are cooking it at a decently low temperature. So you could use extra virgin olive oil, that would be fine. But just keep in mind that extra virgin olive oil does have somewhat of a flavor to it. Avocado oil is very neutral in flavor. So keep that in mind with which one you choose, because olive oil will taste more like olive oil. Not a lot, but it just has more of a flavor than this avocado oil is. Just give it a quick little stir, whisk it all together, and then we add it right on in. Right on into our dry mixture without making a huge mess, hopefully. Pop that into the sink. I am making a little bit of a mess today. And then stir this. So you want to make sure everything is coated. All of the dry pieces you want to be totally coated with the wet mixture. And I am using 2 baking sheets. You could use 1 if you really wanted to. If you don't have 2, you can do this with only 1 baking sheet. It will be a little bit crowded of a baking sheet, and you actually do need to cook for a little bit longer, but it does work. So with 1 baking sheet, the cooking time would be actually about 60 minutes, a full hour, rather than 45. And you may want to give it a little bit of a stir because it will be kind of thick. So if you have 2 baking sheets, that's better because it will cook faster and it'll be crunchy. They'll both be crunchy either way you do them, but it'll cook a lot faster. Let me get this out of our way. Okay, so I have 1 baking sheet here that I'm trying to unburied. And I've got my parchment paper already on it. And then I have a second baking sheet here that also has a piece of parchment paper on it. So we're gonna equally divide the granola in between these two pans. About there and about there. Now the granola will not fully cover both of the pans. It'll just spread out enough though. So we're spreading it out. You want to make it in a decently thin layer. Maybe you've made granola at home before, perhaps. So you probably know already how to do this, but a decently thin layer, okay? You don't want any large piles of the oats or the nuts because you want everything to get crispy. That's why we like granola, right? So spreading them out. Spread them out. And again, our oven is already preheated to 325. So a decently low temperature. Get that off of there. Let me get this out of our way. And rinse off my hands. All right, so these are going into the ovens. We are using both racks of the oven so they can go in together. And then halfway through the baking time, hopefully this makes sense in the recipe, halfway through the baking time, you need to take them out and exchange. So the one that was on the bottom goes on the top, the one that was on the top goes on the bottom, okay? Rotate them around so that they cook evenly because most ovens have the heating mechanisms either top or bottom. So stuff tends to not always cook evenly. So make sure that you do switch them. So let's get those over here. Hold on a second. All right, and then, because that takes 45 minutes, we're not gonna sit here to let it cook. So I have the finished product. This granola, we aren't stirring it during the baking time. You can if you want, but I tend to prefer some chunks in the granola, and so if you stir it, then that breaks down all the chunks and it will be more of small little pieces of the individual oats and things. So we don't stir this kind, and it comes out more in chunks, and that will break up as you scoop it out of the container. So when the granola is done, after you've flipped it all and it's finished baking, take it out of the oven and let it just cool on the pans. It will continue to get crispier on the pans as it cools. So it might be just the tiniest bit soft still when you take it out of the oven. Don't be alarmed, it will get crispier as it cools. Once it's completely cool, you can eat it before then, of course, but once it's completely cool and you want to store it for later, make sure it is totally cool. So it could even be several hours, that's fine. Put it into a container that can be airtight. So this is what I typically use, just like a Pyrex with a lid on it, or whatever you want to use, but airtight is the way to go. And when it's all finished, I'm trying not to dump it everywhere. This is our finished type of granola product. So a great breakfast, a more light type of breakfast for maybe a Thanksgiving. If you're gonna have a big meal later on, still eat something. A scoop of this granola, a quarter cup is what I have the recipe or the nutrition information written as. So a quarter cup, one of those, or maybe a half cup. So that would be 2 servings. And some sort of non-dairy yogurt would be a nice pair together. This is one brand of a yogurt. If you're doing a non-dairy yogurt, there are many types out there. Granola is always great on yogurt. If you like the regular Greek yogurt, dairy yogurt, that's fine. That would be a fine option too, a non-fat version of Greek yogurt. Or if you're trying to be totally plant-based, totally vegan, many types of the non-dairy yogurt these days. This is so delicious. It is coconut based. It is unsweetened, which is a very important part. So if you can find an unsweetened yogurt, that would be great, because yogurt tends to have tons of sugar added into it. So unsweetened is what I typically prefer to buy. This particular one you can find actually at Target or at Sprouts. They might have it, I know they have smaller cups of it at Vons, those types of stores. So this is one that I like. Trader Joe's also has an almond-based one or a cashew-based yogurt as well, as do many other stores. So that would be a nice breakfast for your Thanksgiving day. So here are our final recipes. I hope you enjoyed seeing these recipes today. Thank you for joining me today for class, getting into the holiday spirit with our Thanksgiving sort of themed recipes today. If you have any questions, please let me know in the comments, or any feedback as well. I would love to hear anything that you would like to share. If you have any requests for perhaps future recipes, future cooking classes, if there's certain foods you'd like to see a plant-based version of, I would love to hear that. I haven't planned which recipes specifically I'll be making for next month's class, so there is still time if you have specific holiday themed requests. Other than that, I think that is everything. I'm so glad you joined me this morning. Have a happy Thanksgiving. I will see you again after Thanksgiving. So until then, be well, enjoy your Thanksgivings within moderation, and be safe if you're in groups. Thank you. Oh, good. I got the book. Oh. All right. Thank you all for watching. Until next time.